Have you ever felt like the more you explore truth, the more distant you feel from the world around you? Like peeling back the layers of reality only reveals a kind of loneliness you didn't expect. You're not imagining it. Throughout history, those who dared to ask deeper questions, who dared to look beyond the veil, often found themselves misunderstood, excluded, or quietly pushed aside. Not because they were wrong, but because they were unsettling. We're told that knowledge is power, that wisdom is the highest virtue. But the truth is more complicated. The deeper you see, the more you risk being unseen. Let's ask the uncomfortable question. Why does society so often reject those who think deeply? To answer this, we need to look at how human beings are wired, not just intellectually, but emotionally and biologically.
Think of this.
When someone walks into a room with physical power, people often admire it. They might even feel protected. When someone walks in dressed in wealth, others may feel envy, but it's usually mixed with aspiration. But when someone enters with intellectual presence, the kind that cuts through small talk, that questions assumptions, that quietly challenges the norm, people react differently, not with admiration, but with discomfort. Psychologists call this the cognitive mirror. A deep thinker doesn't just offer insight, they reflect something back. And what they reflect isn't always flattering. They show us the cracks in our logic, the blind spots in our beliefs, the truths we try not to think about. And this is not easy to forgive, because it's not just a challenge to our ideas, it's a challenge to who we are. You see, most of us construct our identity around our thoughts, what we believe, what we value, what we assume to be true. So when someone comes along and calmly dismantles those beliefs, not by shouting but by thinking, it feels personal. Deep thinking is rarely loud, but it is disruptive. This is why throughout history, great minds have often lived on the margins. Nietzsche, who questioned morality itself, Hypatia, who defied religious dogma, Alan Turing, who reshaped our understanding of intelligence but died a social outcast. The price of deep thought is often social exile. But why? Why is intelligence met with resistance more than reverence? To understand this, we have to go beyond philosophy into neuroscience. The human brain evolved not for truth, but for survival. For millions of years, our ancestors lived in small tribes where acceptance meant life and rejection meant death. Being right didn't matter as much as being liked, which is why our brains are wired to prioritize harmony over honesty, familiarity over fact, groupthink over growth. When someone comes along and says, "Maybe we're wrong about this," the brain doesn't say, "Interesting." It says, "Threat." This is why group settings are often the most hostile to deep thinkers. In one-on-one conversations, people may feel curious, even inspired. But in groups, intelligence becomes social risk. Because now, it's not just about what's true, it's about how we're being seen. People don't just protect their beliefs, they protect their status. And when someone smarter, more thoughtful, or more insightful appears, it threatens that status. So the group reacts. They interrupt, they dismiss, they change the subject, not always out of malice, but out of instinct.
Now think back.
Have you ever shared a profound idea only to be met with silence? Have you ever watched eyes glaze over when you try to talk about the meaning of life, the nature of reality, or the illusion of self? That wasn't just apathy. It was a defense mechanism. Your words were reaching places others weren't ready to go. Because while deep thinking expands your world, it contracts your social space. You begin to notice patterns others ignore. You become sensitive to contradictions, to hypocrisy, to the quiet absurdities of everyday life. And the more you see, the less you can unsee. Suddenly, conversations about weekend plans or celebrity gossip feel hollow. This isn't arrogance, it's displacement. You've moved into a different psychological landscape, and there are fewer people there. This brings us to an uncomfortable paradox. The smarter you are, the more alone you might feel. Not because you're better, but because you're tuned to different frequencies. And while the world rewards charisma, certainty, and simplicity, it rarely celebrates uncertainty and nuance. This is why loud confidence often triumphs over quiet wisdom. Social media, for instance, doesn't reward depth, it rewards speed. It rewards outrage. It rewards repetition. The thinker by nature is slow, careful, reflective. They hesitate before speaking. They qualify their statements. They say, maybe, while the world rewards those who shout, definitely. So the algorithm overlooks the thinker. The crowd ignores the nuance. And the deep voice gets lost in the noise. So, what's the answer? Should deep thinkers silence themselves to fit in? Should they dilute their thoughts, wrap their truths in candy and hope to be accepted? No. But they should understand the landscape. Knowing why you feel isolated doesn't make it easier, but it makes it clearer. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're just walking a path that most people don't even know exists. And sometimes that path is narrow. Sometimes it's steep. But it leads somewhere that surface conversations never will. The philosopher Kierkegaard once said, "The crowd is untruth." He wasn't saying people are bad. He was saying the truth is rarely found in the noise of the majority. It's found in solitude, in silence, in suffering, in the difficult, ongoing act of seeing clearly. This is the burden of awareness, but it's also the gift, because the same mind that makes you feel apart from the world is the one that lets you understand it more deeply. And in that understanding, there is meaning. Not always comfort, but meaning. So if you feel alone in your thoughts, if you find it hard to connect, if you wonder whether it's worth it to think this much, know this. You're not alone in your loneliness. There is a quiet community of minds across time and space who have felt what you feel. And though they may never be loud, they are listening. Keep thinking, because while deep thought may cost you popularity, it gives you something rarer. It gives you clarity. And in a world drowning in noise, that is a sacred thing.